We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
Well, there is one thing you have to say about Joe Biden. He is an old school Democrat. Who better to read those immortal words by the original Democrat, the founder of the Democratic Party, Thomas Jefferson, who wrote famously in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created by the thing." And that kind of makes me wonder what in the name of the, the thing is going on here. What is going on here? Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott. And this is not just a, hey, let's make fun of Joe Biden episode. We've done plenty of those. We're actually a little over that, I think. This episode, well, he's not. Well, this episode is about the serious issues of 2 years, 2 elections in a row now. The Democrats committing themselves to elect disability, just simple inability to do the job. Here are some other actual quotes from our friends over at The Daily Show. These are some Biden historical quotes just to give you an idea that this isn't just a one-off stumble. Here's Joe Biden speaking about some of the founding principles of our country. "We, the people of the United States, in order to form up, hey, just get in the country, man. It's happening." Directly from the preamble to the Constitution, as you all know. Here's Joe Biden evoking the kind of the magnificence of Martin Luther King's vision of a colorblind America. When Joe Biden said, "I have a dream that one day the way he saw him, he had it." And finally, we could do this all day. Here's our Democratic nominee for president of the United States in a very noble and bipartisan way, actually quoting perhaps the most famous Republican president of them all, Abraham Lincoln. And when Joe Biden said with deep emotion, "67, look, Jack, that's a long time, and we all know where we're at." As Lincoln famously said at Gettysburg, this is not... It's actually not funny. It is, but it's not. And look, full disclosure, folks, the reason I wanted to do this segment was because I absolutely had to have my favorite political comedy writer of all time read an article from scrappleface.com. Scott, you were apparently on hand at the Biden campaign event recently, and you covered that at Scrappleface. Could you please read us verbatim your report of the latest from the Joe Biden campaign?
Because of the nature of Scrappleface.com, I've never had to be on hand anywhere. But after I heard that Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg had dropped out of the race and decided to endorse Joe Biden, I wrote this piece at scrappleface.com yesterday, March 2nd. Joe Biden drops out of race, endorses Biden. And the lead says, following disappointing performances in early primaries and caucuses, former Vice President Joe Biden today suspended his campaign for the Democratic nomination for the President of the United States and announced he'll throw his support behind the winner of the South Carolina primary, the former Delaware Senator Joe Biden. Now quoting Biden, "A man's got to know when he's whipped," Biden told a tearful crowd of supporters. "It's time for me to skedaddle and make way for that Biden fella. God love him. He's got the Joe-mentum now, and I'm yesterday's newspaper, stained filthy with bird droppings and cat urine." Anyway, it goes on to say how he admired Klobuchar and Buttigieg for dropping out of the race and endorsing Biden. And if they can put aside their own ambitions for the good of the country, well, so can old Joe. At the end of the story, it ends up with... Thanks to a tailwind from the Biden endorsement, Joe Biden says he thinks that, quote, "Democrats will finally come together around the one candidate who can beat President Eisenhower."
This is funny, but it's not funny. If this were an entertainer or a city, but this isn't funny. And the reason I think this is an issue is because this isn't the first time we've seen this. As a matter of fact, this isn't the first time we've seen this in a while. If you think way back to 2016, ladies and gentlemen, whatever the condition was, there is no question whatsoever, as you can see from this brief montage of clips, that the Democratic nominee was a very, very ill person in terms of personal health. Whether or not she's recovered from them seems problematic. We don't get to see a lot of Hillary Clinton. And the fact that Hillary Clinton went almost a full year during the campaign without doing a single press conference or anything of that nature is telling me that that woman was far, far sicker than she wanted you to believe. And we only know this because other people with cameras happened to see what the mainstream media didn't want you to see. So my question to both of you is simply this. What does it say about a political party that is willing to nominate people who are clearly incapacitated by reasons of health? Scott, what do you say about that?
I think it says two things. Number one, consider the competition. So, by standing alone as a man in the condition that he is, you look at Joe Biden, you say, well, that's troubling. But then you look around him and say, well, who else? It's not like there's a lot of really sort of vibrant, engaged, compelling characters surrounding him. And I think
it's not a deep bench.
The other thing it says, I think, is just how terribly long it takes to be able to build the kind of support you need to be able to win your party's nomination. Only rarely do you get a Johnny-come-lately character like Barack Obama, who seems to, have sprung from the side of the Buddha or something and just magically appeared. In general, it takes a long time to build that countrywide network of not just name recognition, but of people who know you and owe you. And that is, if I saw anything at the local level when I was running for county offices, is how interdependent elected officials are on each other and this little pecking order. For example, you wouldn't think of trying to run for county executive or county commissioner if you really couldn't get the support of your congressman. If you had a Republican congressman in that district. And, I was very openly told by state legislators that they would help do a fundraiser for me if I promised to never vote for any of their opponents or never support any of their opponents in any future races. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, what if one of your opponents is like my best friend or something? And they're like, well, that's how it works. And the one state senator who could tell that the conversation was starting to get really creepy and mafia-like stepped in and thinking he was going to kind of smooth things over, said, Scott, let me just tell you, it's about loyalty. It's just about loyalty. That's all. And
this thing of ours.
So all of that to say that it takes time to build those loyalties, especially on a nationwide basis. And so, you get a very short list. Like, frankly, Bernie Sanders' big handicap right now is that he doesn't have those loyalties in the Democratic Party. Not only is he not even nominally a member of the Democratic Party, but he has been kind of a off by himself, loner kind of thing. In fact, my understanding is during the next season, Bernie Sanders will actually be playing Larry David in Larry David's show. I mean, he's that kind of character. He really is. And you don't have that network of support. So Bernie is going to be able to power through the primaries, but he's going to flop in a general election because he has not built that network of support. And you don't need many votes in the primaries, and you can get just the hard lefties to support you.
Do you not have an ethical problem with this, though?
An ethical problem with somebody who is not well?
With nominating, and I'll go into this in more detail in just a second with Steve. We're not talking about somebody who becomes incapacitated in office. That's something that is unexpected. Or we're talking about people who are clearly incapacitated, dangerous in the job of President of the United States because of health reasons. Do you not find that an immoral and somewhat repugnant policy? At the very least, we've seen it 2 elections in a row now on the part of the Democrats.
Well, it's actually publicly refuted. I mean, the people who are backing that candidate say, no, this isn't true. He's out there. He's given a million speeches. He's tired from time to time. You're going to stumble. If I followed you around with a camera all day long, I'd certainly catch you doing stupid things or saying stupid things. But you wouldn't. And so that's the excuse that they make as part of this. Right. And I think your assessment of Hillary Clinton's health condition is not one that is beyond question. In fact, her entire party, her entire campaign would have questioned that, and she herself would have questioned it and said, no, Bill Whittle's full of crap. He doesn't know anything about her health condition. So on the one hand, you've got the Democratic public who hears a completely different story than the one you think you know. And so they They're not even getting that. But I don't know if people who even see him up close think anything other than, well, you know, that's old Joe. He's always been that way, but he's a good guy and he'll do the right thing in a pinch.
Well, one of the quotes we missed was that he's recently said, "I'm running for U.S. Senate and I want your support." And by the way, when it comes to people, when it comes to people saying who you're going to believe, Bill Whittle, it's going to be, you're going to believe the Democratic Party or your own lying eyes. My assessment of Hillary Clinton's health and Joe Biden's health are predicated on what I've seen with my own lying eyes repeatedly, intensely on camera. It's pretty clear to me. Steve, I kind of want to develop this a little bit more. You know, to be as fair as we possibly can, people might say, well, Ronald Reagan's final years in office, he wasn't very sharp. I'm not going to concede that point. But even if I was to do it for the sake of the argument, that's not the same thing as having somebody who has not been elected yet going into the office. Woodrow Wilson was incapacitated for months, and the country was basically run by his wife and his top aide ran the country. But that's not the same thing as electing a Woodrow Wilson who is confined to bed with a stroke and pretending that he's going to be the president. That happened in office. I think the way it happened, and I think the result of it was shameful, but that's not the same thing. Clearly, everybody knows it. The Daily Show, we use their memes for it. Everybody's aware that this guy is not fully there, and they're nevertheless, he is their hope. Is it just cynicism on their part or desperation for power, or is it nothing more than what Scott pointed out, and that is just sheer raw animal desperation? There is simply nobody else on the table.
Wow. Did I ever tell you guys the story how my great-grandmother finally quit smoking?
No.
Well, I'd been trying to quit at the time. I tried twice and failed miserably at it. And Nana finally got so senile that she forgot she smoked. And I thought, oh, Nana, that's cheating. Wish I could do that, right? Eternal sunshine of the spotless mind and all that. And you missed my favorite Biden quote, Bill. And this one's just from last week. He said he was looking forward to appointing the first African-American woman to the Senate.
And about time, too.
Yeah. So he's got that going for him, which is nice.
It's one of the many duties of the president.
I mentioned my
appointing people to the Senate.
I mentioned my great-grandmother because, she lived to be, I think, 96 years old. But her mental decline, you enter the sort of Dottie stage where you're just getting older and forgetting stuff. And then she entered a very steep decline very quickly. And the last real conversation I had with her, she called me every male name in the family except for Steve. It breaks your heart. But she also doesn't have a nuclear football following around everywhere. And that kind of dementia, it alters your personality. It finally made her very mean and vindictive, which she'd never been when she still had all her faculties, not even an ounce of that. Let me tell you, though, I'm glad you brought up Hillary Clinton, because they're the three things that scare me most about Hillary Clinton. And forgive me, this cold is vicious, and I'm really starting to lose my voice now. Three things that scared me most about Hillary Clinton were her laugh when it was real, the way she looked at balloons when they were dropping, and Tim Kaine, her vice presidential pick. He was, and I'm dead serious about this, he was so far to the left. He looks all moderate and he was soft-spoken and all that. I mean, this guy is just dyed-in-the-wool Marxist-Leninist commie. And he's going to be one heartbeat away from the presidency under somebody who had to get dragged into the van. So that scared me to death about Hillary Clinton. Well, I think the Democrats know they've got a loser in Bernie Sanders, and this is why they're all uniting behind Biden right now. Yeah, they know Biden's losing it, but if he dies in office, so what? I can almost promise you that if Biden is the nominee, he's going to pick his own version of Tim Kaine. Maybe Pete Buttigieg, who, he seems kind of moderate, but is actually a red diaper baby through and through. Or Liz Warren, who is just as far left as Bernie Sanders. And then they're going to either wait for him to die or 25th Amendment.
You get President Warren. That's how you get office. President Warren.
Yeah, because they can't get a Sanders or a Warren or a Buttigieg elected. So this is how they sneak them in, by putting them at the bottom of the ticket behind this doddering old man. And I call him a doddering old man with complete sympathy. I wish somebody would take him aside and in his family and say, Joe, you got to stop this. You're killing yourself. Because I honestly believe it. The 2 debates ago, Joe's always got lots of energy, even when he's speaking absolute, word vomit out of his mouth. And 2 debates ago, he did the old man shuffle to the podium. It was not that sprightly, bouncy walk he usually has. And we're watching him decline. And I guarantee it's going to get if that ticket were to win, it's going to get us a Veep that the American public would never, ever in a million years have voted for president.
We live in an age of emotion, where reason and argument and stuff are secondary to feeling and authenticity and all the rest of it. So I'll just come out and tell you this. If you think I'm making fun of people with dementia and failing memory, you're wrong. I'm making fun of public figures who are running for positions of great power with failing memory and dementia. My mom started to develop symptoms of Alzheimer's back in 2004, and the last time I really saw my mom was in 2006. She's still alive, but my mom has not been here for 15, 16 years now. I've seen how this works, and I've seen how not only do you lose your memory, much more alarming, the loss of memory is heartbreaking, the dementia and the cursing and the rages and stuff from people who've always been quiet and polite and kind is horrible. And so I'm not making fun of those people. I am related to one of them, and I love her very much, and I don't know what to do. She's dead, but she's still alive. To do this to the country is not just abuse of Joe Biden, and it's not just abuse of the American people. It's an act of cruelty and an act of cynicism and an act of such desperation for power at any price that it just brands this modern Democratic Party as what it is. We talk about this a lot, and Steve and I and Scott talk about this backstage, and we talk about it backstage before we even run the cameras on our backstage show for members only. We often ask ourselves, I know this is going to come as a shock to many people on the left, but we often ask ourselves, are we right about this? Are we right? Are they right? Maybe we're wrong. What if we're wrong? And I think that's an important thing to do. And then I see things like this, and I see the cynicism and the sheer lust for power that drives something like this. And I don't know what to say about it. I don't. I watched what they did to Kavanaugh and the impeachment and what they're doing to Joe Biden, who doesn't deserve this. And if they think it's going to work, then they're not only cynical and evil, but they're stupid as well. Having seen this not just in my mom, but in other people, if you think Biden's going to get better, he's not. And if you think Biden's going to stay at this level of incoherency, he's not. And if you continue to push Biden as your candidate because you've allowed Bernie Sanders into the party, then all you're going to do is you are going to lose, number one, and that's all you care about. But even Joe Biden, who I do not particularly think is a man of integrity, who's accused Republicans of wanting to put black people back in slavery and all of that, all of it, even Joe Biden doesn't deserve what is going to happen to him if you decide to keep up this charade. Admiral Stockdale was one of the great American heroes of the 20th century. He was one of the first people into the Hanoi Hilton. He was a man who provided morale, support, courage for almost a decade in unbelievably harsh conditions. He was an American hero, and he was a great man. And Jim Stockdale deserved better than being pimped out on a stage in a vice presidential debate and making it clear to the American public he didn't know where he was. He deserved better than that. And it's not the way you should be remembering Jim Stockdale. And as much as I don't like Joe Biden, you should not be remembering Joe Biden by the kind of performance he is going to turn in a presidential debate if you continue to force him to be the nominee because you have painted yourself into such a miserable corner. You people should be ashamed of yourselves. Not Democratic voters. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the people that are doing this in order to have power at any price. I hope for Joe Biden's sake, he finally becomes so incapacitated that he himself steps down. And I hope this happens in private, because this is not a pretty thing to watch, no matter how funny it may be or how shocking it is, in the same way that watching two trains collide is something you can't take your eyes off of. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. This is BillWhittle.com. We're paid for by the members at BillWhittle.com. Very small number of the people who actually watch the show actually pay for it. If you believe in capitalism, if you believe in market, if you believe in paying for something that you find of value, the way to do that is to go over to BillWhittle.com and become a member. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on Right Aim.